optimize the amount of gains that it can end up being counterproductive. Hello, everybody. So this is a little bit of an attempt to revitalize the YouTube, especially in terms of the long form content. It's been, I think, a subject that I've felt inclined or inspired to talk about as it sort of relates to me and my personal experiences, as well as just recently where I kind of caught myself doing this, and then I was like, no, you don't need to do that. Just stick to what you've been doing. Silly, don't try to overcomplicate things. So, I would say do not underestimate the power of making small gains and then letting those small gains add up over time. So, and that kind of goes hand in hand with another point that I want to make in the video, especially for the beginner to intermediate lifters, is don't try to change things up all the time. Especially if you feel like for the first time maybe it's not working. There could be a lot of variables that might be at play as to why maybe one specific block you're not noticing the same amount of gains from that block. So keep in mind these things are multifactorial. So outside of programming, how good are we sleeping? How good are we recovering and managing other stressors outside of just training that might be, directly impacting training. So, as it relates to my training, if you know me, then you'll know in the past, I definitely was dealing with some persistent low back pain, and deadlifts were very inconsistent for a good amount of time. Realistically, I didn't hit a 1 rep max deadlift PR in years, and I don't think that was really anybody to blame in specific. Of course there's a lot of stuff going on, and then me trying to learn as a young clinician and test things out. I think that I was kind of counterproductive because I was swapping things out. I was trying new things out, even if it wasn't directly related to the programming I was just receiving. So just recently I hit my first true deadlift 1 rep max PR. Like I said, in years. And afterwards, training had been very consistent for at least 8 to 10 months. Good deadlift training, slowly rep PRs adding up, block after block after block. And I have just been rerunning the same 3 or 4 blocks for my deadlift, and it's been working out really good, and it's allowed me to be consistent. But after my deadlift PR, I was really thinking okay, maybe it's time to step it up. Maybe it's time to change things, and maybe it's time to just actually get more volume or a maybe higher average intensity for my deadlift sessions, because as of right now, if you were to look at my deadlift training, you would be probably pretty shocked that someone that's around the 83 kilogram weight class is pretty much making some mad gains with the deadlift setup that I'm working with right now, where it pretty much just consists of working up to a top set in a specific rep range, with the first week being RP 6, 6.5, and then slowly building up for 3 more weeks after that. But then that's I guess probably pretty typical. The big thing is after that, the only other deadlifting I'm doing is I'll back off with 5 sets of 1 for cluster singles, and they're relatively pretty light, and that is all I'm doing for deadlifts. Outside of during the week, I'll get in 2 sets of RDLs. Which has been a pretty good manageable point for working through some of that like persistent low back discomfort that I was dealing with, so that we're kind of like training more consistently now. So I had that sort of like epiphany moment, and then I'm like, why am I gonna change it up at this point if it's working well? I think that maybe it's too soon to just discard something just simply because I think that I could get more gains out of doing something else when I'm already making good amount of gains where I'm at, like experience wise, and like I guess relative to my deadlift in terms of like competitors in the same weight class. So after that, it was if I look back here right now, which I'm going to try to hopefully just edit in some of these video clips for people to see. At this point, it was 21 weeks ago. I hit 635 for a PR. I would say it was pretty smooth. I actually also had a narrow miss at 650 after that. Just wasn't quite there. All good. And then after that point is when we started to think about changing things up before I stopped myself. And I said, you know what, we're just going to continue to do like this macro cycle, this 3 to 4 block thing one more time. And what do you know? The same thing happened. I was PRing like my rep PRs, and then I actually was feeling so good for my blocks where I was hitting sets of 2 on that last week. I decided to just have some fun, and we hit 650. I lost grip at the top, but I was fairly confident that it was like a poor execution thing. So we actually went up to 665 for a 30-pound PR since the last time I 1-rep maxed, right? So it was the 635 from 21 weeks ago, and then 3 weeks ago I hit 665 for 1. We could argue that maybe I had a little bit more in the tank than the 635 for that, first PR. But if we look at that 21 weeks and then 3 weeks ago, that's a difference of 18 weeks. So in 18 weeks, I gained, from what I lifted on that day, 30 pounds. 30 pounds in 18 weeks. So let's see here. That means roughly a little over, so 4.5 months. So every, I don't know why I can't math right now, but 30 divided by 4. So roughly that's 7.5 pounds per month that I'm putting on my deadlift, which at this level I think is pretty good. And I feel like we're gonna run into an issue of like trying to ask for too much, trying to optimize the amount of gains that it can end up being counterproductive. We try new things out that don't work out, and then we're sort of like trying to retrace back to figure out what works, when in reality we take the 7.5 pounds per month. We could even round down and say, maybe I had more in the tank that first max out session. So we'll round down to 5 pounds. 5 pounds times 12. So if we're looking at training throughout a year, if I were to consistently keep that 5 pounds per month, that's 60 pounds on my deadlift in a year. At this level, like if I put 60 pounds on my deadlift in a year, I'm pretty freaking happy. And if we calculated it out as the 7.5 pounds per month, that's 90. So even if we rounded it, anywhere from 60 to 90 pounds in a year on my deadlift would be amazing. If I do that within the next year and I just hit 665, we're looking at 755. Of course, at some point when we start to really get up there, it's going to slow down, of course. But I think that when we're like looking at training and we're like trying to make a decision on whether we should change things or not, we need to sort of consider things in the long term, um, and consider like where we're at as a lifter. And maybe at some point things start to slow down, and we need to try new things out and try to track how those are going to work out, see if we can find any trends. But I would say like just don't jump the gun on dismissing things that worked in the past. Um, Realistically, until maybe they're not yielding as much gains, and then consider that we might not have to make drastic changes at that point, in order to maybe pick back up on the gain train, so to say. And really, I think that, me as a beginner or like me as an intermediate, like something I've learned, I learned this the hard way. I changed things up like too much, and then I basically completely got myself out of a rut with my deadlift form. And then I think really it was just like an epiphany, like, how about we just go back and look at deadlift sessions and how I was performing the lift when it was almost like it was super consistent and always feeling good, and just freaking replicate it. Stop trying to overcomplicate things. Stop trying to change up form with some like fancy new cue or new thing that you've heard, some new, corrective exercise, and just perform the freaking lift how we were doing it when it felt good for us. And then I would say at that point, when lifts are going good, maybe you should take the time to write down 2 or 3 cues for that lift in specific that you can go back to when things aren't feeling good. And then you can, revisit and be like, you know what, these are the 3 things that I can think of off the top of my head that worked really good. So I just need to go in for my sessions and do those things. Pretty much it's just been slow incremental increases. I have some things pulled up where it's like 4 rep maxes, 3 rep maxes, and it was almost like when I was trying to rerun this macro cycle, I was just barely chipping the weight that I was doing the prior time that I did it. So whether it was 5 pounds or 10 pounds heavier, from the first block to the second, for like maybe sets of 4, top sets of 4, we are going up 5 to 10 pounds. And we're also trying to keep like the same level of intensity for the sessions, where for me specifically, week 1 and 2 are where they've gone good. I'm very conservative week 1 and week 2, and then week 3 and week 4 is when I'm really starting to ramp up. And it's worked great. And I think a lot of people would be surprised that I'm making the progress that I am with my current deadlift training setup. And I just think that it's something to keep in mind, right? Like, if we're already eating good at the table, we're already making, pretty consistent gains, especially if we consider it on a longer period of time, then maybe like we don't need to try to bite off more than we can handle and have it backfire on us. This was very much unscripted, and it's just something that I've been inspired to kind of talk about as it relates to my personal experience and how it might help like other, beginner to intermediate lifters. So we just felt good coming into this, really just doing it unscripted. I hope that others find it, useful, beneficial. It doesn't have to just apply to like powerlifting in specific. It could, I guess we could broaden the spectrum, whether, it's just fitness in general, or, Olympic lifting, CrossFit lifting. As long as we're keeping track of our training and we're noticing good trends, we're noticing, small PRs over time, especially if you're more that intermediate to advanced category, that maybe we should be content with that and consider it over just a longer period of time. I think that's really about all I had for today's little rant. We are going to try to revitalize the channel a bit more with some more long form content, really just about subjects or specific topics that I'm pretty passionate about. We've been doing a lot of like the live streaming of fitness workouts, but I did want to bring back some more long form content and get back to uploading more on YouTube. So, of course, if you would like to see me talk more about like this type of content, then for sure let me know and I will keep it up. Any specific topics or suggestions for topics that you guys have, feel free to let me know, and I will see you on the next one.